We have Maria Andreoli with us this morning. Maria is our psychologist. She's been talking to us about neurodivergence. And today we're going to be talking with Maria about ADHD. Maria, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, I'm here. I'm going good, thanks. How are you?
I'm well. It's lovely to have you with us again. And today, I believe you're going to unpack a little bit about ADHD for us. You know, what does that actually stand for and what does it really mean?
So ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So as the name would suggest, there's some challenges that people may have with attention. It actually doesn't mean they can't pay attention. It just means they have trouble controlling when they do pay attention. Or they could also have challenges with hyperactivity, so just like higher energy levels than other people.
Are there sort of different variants of it at all, or does it always look the same?
Yeah, look, it can look pretty different. So some people might only have challenges with paying attention. Some people might have challenges only with hyperactivity, and some people have both. So there's like three main types of ADHD, but it can look differently in different people. Look, I might actually just use a little metaphor, just to really explain what it is in general. So like whether you have problems with attention or hyperactivity, ADHD is really just there's some kind of deficit in your prefrontal cortex, right? And I want you to think of this part. It's called the executive function. I want you to imagine that your executive function is a traffic cop at a busy intersection, right? So the cop's job is to direct the cars. So these are different thoughts, impulses, emotions, sounds, could even be hunger, ideas, and the cop decides who goes first. But with the ADHD brain, the cop has fallen asleep. So the cars start coming from every direction all at once. And this is why people with ADHD have some, tendency to look like they're getting distracted, blurting things out, jumping from task to task, or just getting overwhelmed. So it could be that we're getting overwhelmed. We can't control when we pay attention. Could be we can't control our energy levels. Could be just a sense of losing control in different areas. But it could be a few of these, or it could be all of them at once.
Yeah, so that cop falling asleep there would really sort of drive lots of challenges that these children and adults too might actually have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does that look like in their lives?
So, yeah, you mentioned challenges and you're absolutely right. There are a lot of difficulties, that do come. So one of those things could be we struggle, some people might struggle with managing different emotions coming in, and it's hard. There might be lots of big emotions coming in all at once. Could be a challenge with managing schedules, forgetfulness, misplacing things. Just could even be a challenge with noticing the passing of time. This is called time blindness, where a person may not even realize that a certain time, like deadline, is approaching, and it kind of just that sense of a loss of time and not getting things done on time. So, for a child growing up, the kind of things that they might hear a lot are things like, just focus, why can't you sit still? Many of my older clients with ADHD tell me that they grew up feeling like they were just too much. Or sometimes especially for the hyperactive types, they might even grow up having a lot of troubles with friendships, because sometimes if you are kind of just impulsively blurting certain things out, that could lead to friendship breakdowns, right? So they might grow up feeling that they're too much or that they're always in trouble.
So it sounds like it really extends over a lot of different aspects of a child's life when they do have this problem with the, that policeman in the executive function not being alert. So there must be some strengths around this, though. What do you see the strengths as being?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some pretty big strengths that come out. And I think it's so important, as I've mentioned in other chats we've had, when it comes to any kind of neurodivergence, yes, there are challenges, but we do need to focus on the strengths. We can't deny them, because as I've kind of been saying this whole time, when our brain has a deficit in one area, it kind of makes a strength in another area. Basically, when it comes to our brain, strength cannot exist without weakness. So some of the strengths of the ADHD brain, because there is so much, incoming traffic coming in at once, there's also a lot of room for creativity and out of the box thinking. They tend to be able to see connections that others miss. This can come out quite creatively, but it can even come out just in being witty or having a good sense of humor. Like, I've had clients in my office who they struggle academically. They have ADHD, and this might even begin to affect their academics, but they make the most witty, amazing jokes, like just the smartest jokes that are absolutely hilarious. And another one is, we kind of think of daydreaming as a bad thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, I like the way someone once put it, that they said, when I daydream, I'm not being absent-minded to the world. I'm being present to my own thoughts.
Oh, that's a really interesting thought.
It's a good way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah,
and that's what it is. It's that they're very much in their head. And I'll actually mention a little famous example. Einstein. Okay, we don't no official diagnosis with Einstein, but we have good reason to believe he could have had ADHD.
Wow.
He was, your typical, not really focusing in school, just not really interested, not engaged, couldn't pay attention too much until he found something he was interested in, and then he fully delved in. And his big breakthrough came while he was daydreaming, I'm pretty sure in class. And he just started imagining what it would be like to ride on a beam of light. To everyone else, he would have looked totally distracted, but really he was coming up with one of the greatest revolutions in the science world, which I think is pretty cool. And that leads to that other strength, which is hyperfocus. When they do love something, remember, ADHD, it's not a problem with attention, really. It's not that they can't pay attention. It's that it's hard to choose when to turn attention on and off. But when they are very interested in something, they can focus right in on that, and that can last for hours.
So there are some real benefits that come through for someone who has this very fluid sort of mind in which there's not being governed so tightly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some things that can be done to help children that might be struggling with focus and hyperactivity in this context of ADHD?
Yeah, it's a really important question because I've talked about a lot of strengths, but the reality is it's still a deficit in executive functioning. There is a real challenge there where if that child or person doesn't learn the tools on how to manage it, those strengths are not going to shine through. They are really going to struggle. So, like I've said, there's a challenge with being able to organize what information is coming into the brain and what to do with that. So we actually have to teach these kids some really practical tools for organization, because that organization is not happening, intrinsically in their mind the way it might for another person. They need to find ways of externalizing this organization. So some things that we teach these kids are using visual schedules, using planners, because I said one of the challenges is time blindness, where we lose track of time. It helps to keep time visible, by having a watch that they can look at visually, at all times, or the use of visual timers and alarms can be really helpful. Can also help to manage energy levels by using lots of movement breaks. So one of the things they'll do at schools for kids with ADHD is they'll allow them passes, in class where they can just jump up and just go outside and just get a drink. Because if they're just doing that every so often, they're able to focus a lot more. And of course, one of the challenges is managing lots of big emotions and big feelings. And that's part of what we do in therapy, is teaching them how to manage those big emotions. So I'd say those are some tools that are pretty important, to teach a child with ADHD.
So what you're describing to me sounds like something that every child and adult needs to learn as well. So
You're right. You're absolutely right. Just everyone thrives on routine, right?
yeah, yeah. But I guess what you're saying is that children with ADHD need more directed effort around some of these things. Would that be right?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's not going to be as natural to them, and it might even be more of an effort to get them, you know, to learn to follow a schedule and a planner. So I guess that little bit of that extra time, really coaching them through that from a young age, is really going to help them later
Yeah,
on.
and so that really requires an extra level of discipline, I guess, on the part of the parent,
Yeah,
which
you're
might be a
right.
struggle if they have the same neurodivergence.
And that's what we see a lot. Actually, in our workplace, we call them ADHD families. It's like the
Okay.
kid comes in, yeah, the kid comes in for an assessment, and then somewhere in the assessment, while we're talking about the symptoms of ADHD, the parent starts to say, "Oh, I think I've got that too," and then they come back and they get assessed, and then they've got ADHD, and before you know it, you've assessed an entire family.
Wow.
There is a genetic component to ADHD. No single gene, but it's definitely a genetic component. So it's pretty common. And then that's what we're seeing is the parents struggling with organization themselves, let alone being able to, keep the household on a schedule and teach the kid with that. So I guess we're working with the whole family, in these cases. And I think the parent themselves could benefit from learning those skills themselves in the process of teaching their kids as well.
So if a parent notices that their child is struggling in some of these areas, what should they do, and what helps these children at school and home?
Yeah. Look, I think it's important for me to mention now that every kid has some, level of behavior that looks like hyperactivity, and every child daydreams. Like these are all things that are, pretty normal. I know ADHD is a buzzword at the moment, and we're kind of calling everything ADHD. So look, if you're noticing some of these things, it might not be a big thing to worry about, but if it's starting to impact their life, if their teachers are starting to mention concerns, raise concerns, if it's impacting their friendships because maybe they're so impulsive they're not able to hold friends, if their grades are like falling despite them being quite smart, all these kinds of things. And it's like, okay, we might need to look into this a little bit more. Assessment, having them assessed, obviously this is a family's choice whether or not they want that. Some people are uncomfortable with labels, which I completely understand. Having them assessed can be pretty helpful from the lens that you've now given the school this word ADHD, which helps them automatically understand and know how to deal with what's going on, how to teach that child in the classroom. Some schools are even able to get extra funding and support just because you have had that assessment done. So I personally, of course, I'm a psychologist, I want to say this, but I believe that assessment is an important part of the process. But I think it's also really important to focus it from a very strengths-based viewpoint. I think a lot of families stay away from this. They don't want their kids growing up feeling different or weird. Well, your kid might already know that something's a bit different, but sometimes educating them about ADHD in a really positive way, like this is a challenge, but there's some awesome strengths, and you just need to really do these tools and you're going to do awesome if you just learn these things, right? So look, assessment's a big part of that process, I would say, as well as those other strategies that I've mentioned before too.
You've really given us some practical ideas this morning, and you've really helped us unpack something that affects a lot of families. So, I thank you for coming on, Maria, and we'll look forward to
Sure, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next time.